Hey guys, here we are, the Quiggin Out MMA Podcast. This is going to be episode 11, and I am joined, as you can see, by the one and only Steamrolla himself, Matt Frevola. How you doing, sir?
Oh, I'm doing good, man. Just watched my boy Marab just crush it. He is a machine, man.
That was insane, and I know we were both watching at the same time, and I almost just had you on the show to watch it with me while it was going on, just to see your reactions, but I didn't want to take anything away from that. Um, what I really want to talk about, right off the bat, you've got your fight next week with Frank Camacho. Your team is doing some outstanding things these past few weeks with, Aljamain, the guys up in, New York, but also the guys down here with Billy Q. So how much are you really riding into that and using that as, riding that win train going into next week?
Oh man, I mean it's unbelievable being able to go out there in Vegas with Billy Q and corner him and do his whole fight week with him, help him with the fight week with the weight cut and go through the process with him. Kind of taking mental notes the whole time out there, because I knew I'd be out there.
Mm-hmm.
For my fight week, and then getting to see Aljamain and the guys out there and Marab out there, and then watching how Aljamain went out there. Well, and then Billy Q goes out there and crushes it. Billy Q has an insane fight, a huge win.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then the following weekend, Aljamain follows it up with a statement win, which, I mean, in my opinion, should have been for a title.
Yeah, I agree.
But but now, they can't deny Aljamain anymore. And he's going to get what he deserves, and that's a title fight, and he's going to have the belt around his waist by the end of the year. I can guarantee that he's the real deal. And just watching Marab go out there and do his thing, man, it's a great time, and it's awesome that I can be around these talented fighters who just, we all help each other. They make me better, and I like to think that I make them better.
Well, and you have the distinct advantage of, we've talked about it time and time again, cross-training in today's MMA landscape versus cross-training 10 years ago. 10 years ago, you weren't going to someone else's gym. You had one gym. That's where you were doing everything. You brought people in, other coaches. But really for you've got Gracie Tampa South. You've got, Longo, Serra up in New York. How are you balancing that, and how beneficial is that to you to really get those different looks and, continue to keep doing that? Because you've been doing it for a while now.
Yeah, it's huge. I grew up in Long Island, so, that's always home. And whenever I'm home, I'm training with the Serra Longo boys. That's my home team. But I was down in Tampa for about 8 years. I went to University of Tampa. I really started my career down here, fighting amateur. I mean, you remember going through the amateur circuits down here, and then me and Billy Q just forming a huge, and with Matt Arroyo leading us,
Mm-hmm.
So it's really, the training never stops, the growing never stops. And I'm definitely blessed to have my team down here and my team up there, and then I love bringing everyone together too. Like Billy Q's been up to Long Island, visiting, training with us, and then guys from Long Island come down and train down here. So it's pretty awesome.
And that's pretty exciting too, to kind of mesh the two worlds, because again, it's it's not like you're training in Orlando and Tampa. You've got Florida and New York, so bringing the two together. So talk about the biggest challenges you had to go through, if any, because every fighter who gets a chance to talk in this last month since the UFC started putting on events again has talked about how weird it's been to train during a global pandemic. So has anything changed for you? Was it a little bit harder to set things up, or just business as usual?
No, it was definitely it was tough. When I was up in New York, I was still scheduled to fight April 25th,
Mm-hmm.
and I was full go in my fight camp up there, and then the virus hit, and then the gyms closed, and then I want to say that the gyms might have closed down when I was like, 6 weeks out or something like that. So So, you know, for that 6 weeks and 5 weeks out, I was, and 4 weeks out, you know, I was doing quarantine training for a UFC fight. You know, I was doing bag work, I was running, I was doing like workouts at home, I was going to garage gyms.
Anything you
You
could
know,
find, really.
it really was. It was tough, and then you know, mentally it was tough. It was tough to get the proper training, and I'm a big guy that you know, I need to like put in the work to really you know be prepared to go in there and fight these guys. You know, my hard work breeds my confidence, and I leave no stone unturned. So it was tough when I was up there quarantined, and then that fight April 25th got canceled. I want to say it got canceled about 3 weeks out or 2 weeks out.
Hmm.
So once that got canceled, you know, it felt like the right thing at the time, you know, because up in New York it was bad. We were hearing horror stories from hospitals, and I knew people working in hospitals that were saying, you know, they didn't have enough rooms for the bodies, and they were choosing people to use ventilators to live and die, and I was just like, and I'm trying to train for a fight right now, like, but
Kind of makes
yeah,
it seem small in comparison, though.
yeah, it really did. You know, the month, you know, the month of April, it was tough, and then the fight got canceled, and I thought it was the right move at the time. And you know, the month of April, we were quarantined. I made sure you know, I did my part, and stayed quarantined, and then I was just kind of running, doing bag work, lifting weights at my house, staying in shape because you know, I was hoping to get rebooked once this blew over, but and then May hit, and it started blowing over a little bit, and the gyms, everything in New York was still closed. So I ended up going and getting tested when I was in New York, like on my own, and I got COVID swab up my nose, and
Dude, I've been watching those. Those are rough.
yeah, it was rough, especially, you know, deviated septum right here. It wasn't fun. But and thank God, you know, that was negative. But then I also got the antibody test, my blood tested,
Hmm.
and I was actually positive for the antibodies, which was pretty crazy. Which means that I had it.
At some point,
And
yeah.
the only time I can remember was like the begin or like the end of March about, and I was still full fight camp mode for that April 25th fight, and I just remember I was still training right through being sick, thinking it was just I was sick, and I was like blowing my nose, like, and trying to cough around the side of the mat, you know. But but yeah, so I got tested, and then once I found out I was, you know, negative, and negative for the COVID, and I had the antibodies, I booked the ticket. I talked to Matt Arroyo, and Billy Q, and Arroyo said that he was opening the gym for Billy Q to train, so that he could get him ready. So I decided to come down here and put in a fight camp, go back to my roots down here, and somewhat, and put in the fight camp down here with Arroyo and Billy Q and Gracie Tampa South.
And that's crazy that you had the antibodies. I feel like so many people, if we had antibody testing, would find out they had it, you know, months ago, and again, just thought it was like a bad flu. And I'm not trying to downplay it, and to be honest, this is the first time I've had an open conversation about COVID, because this actually affected you. Like, this was actually huge for you being in New York, so, you know, how scary that was, and how bad it got, how quickly, you know, it deteriorated in New York. So, especially with your livelihood being fighting, you know, that was, I can't even imagine what that felt like.
Yeah, it was definitely a roller coaster in that month of April. But you know, once I talked with Arroyo, you know, he assured me that we could get a proper fight camp going on down here. You know, I got the okay from Longo. I told him my plans. He said it was a good idea. and I got that one-way ticket. I got the okay from my family. My fiance Billy back home, she's we're getting married next year, and she was okay
Congrats,
with
man.
me.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, she was okay. She knew that I had to leave and prepare for this fight, and I told her I wasn't coming home without a big W and a nice fat check. So yeah, and I've been down in Tampa for 6 weeks. It was a pretty quick camp, but I mean 6 weeks. I'm ready to go.
And I like that because a lot of guys like who Marab just fought took a fight on short notice. It doesn't seem like you'd be the kind of guy that would really want to do a short notice fight. Look at that face.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie to you. I trust the process. I'm a man of my process, and yeah. But we got it in. We're ready to go.
And I think it just comes down to the fighter. There's some fighters who just they're ready to go 24/7. Some fighters who want that extra preparedness, and in a sport like this, you end up on a skid at any time. You don't know what could happen. Fighters have been cut after one bad loss, so you always want to be as put your best foot forward. And I think that's a smart idea. So I know a lot of people will probably disagree, and everybody that's been on the fight card tonight has said, "I can fight next week. Let's go." They were also in fights that were less than a minute, so.
Yeah, and look how that's turned out for all these quick turnarounds.
And I think it's kind of changing the dynamic because I don't think we're seeing the best fighters we can in the octagon. I don't think we're seeing their best performances just because, like you said, I think they're so anxious to fight that not putting in a full training camp, it kind of doesn't work for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, every fighter is different. I give all these fighters taking these fights right now a lot of credit. But for me, I don't step into that octagon unless I'm 100% prepared. I when I booked that one-way ticket down to Tampa, I didn't have a fight. I came down here and I knew, we told the UFC that I would be ready in mid to late June. So I knew I would have, from 5. Hopefully, we were hoping for 6 weeks, which we got, but I was going to be ready from like 4 or 5 or 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I needed, and that's what we did.
And that's great that you kind of had a timeline. You were like, I'll be ready here, and there's plenty of people that were, have been training for fights that have been canceled. Like yourself, you had the one with, I believe it was Roosevelt Roberts, which I hope gets rebooked at some point because I really want to see that fight.
I know. I got to shut him up, but we'll see if he gets past Jim Miller. So
yeah, and on that same topic, going through all the guys that you've fought over the years, it's one of the few times that almost every matchup, you guys have been about the same. I don't want to say skill level, but the same record. You've had about the same number of fights until now. When you're going into a fight with, Frank Camacho, who's got 30 fights under his belt. So is that intimidating even in the least, or is it just another fight and you're ready to go?
No, it's just another fight. I know he's got a lot of experience, but he's only, I want to say he's like a year or two older than me, so we're about the same age. And I think
it's crazy.
I saw he was like fighting since he was like 16 years old or something crazy like that. But I've got through my amateur fights, through my pro fights, through my Muay Thai fights, I've got 20 fights now, and out of all those amateur fights, you've seen them. A lot of those guys ended up going pro. I don't think Frank had any amateur fights. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm coming into my own right now with 20 fights under my belt, and I'm excited to really. This is my 5th UFC fight now,
which is crazy.
I know, right? It is. So I'm gonna go in there and really show that I'm a veteran, and that this is, I've been doing this for a minute, and that I'm going to show how comfortable I am in there, and pick this guy apart. and have fun doing it.
And I think that's, a lot of your fights, and I think we're going to talk about that now because thinking about it, I have been watching you since 2013. And I might not have known it then, but I started to do some extra research, and I think you're going to enjoy this. So I was there for your USAL fight against Tony Leon.
Yeah.
I don't think I actually have any pictures of the fight because I don't remember it being that long.
He was tough. I remember that.
And then I started looking, and I went, okay, you remember this fight?
Yeah, that's the pro debut right there.
So I was like, okay, pro debut, and that was a sweet armbar. Like, that really was. And still to date, one of my favorite pictures that I've caught in a fight. Just because the timing, everything about it was right where it needed to be. And, when we've done articles before, that's been the header, it'll probably be that again just because it's one of my favorites. So then I kept going, and I found this one.
Oh, good old RFC.
So that was the Mike D'Angelo fight, which, to be honest, sucked for me. Because I like Mike, and I've been friends with Mike, too. That was a tough fight to watch. So then I went, there's no way. I've seen more.
Another RFC. There you go.
And that was when you put Trent McDade to sleep.
Yeah, that was a good one.
And I just remember watching the fight, and I went, I think he's asleep. And he was on top of you when you put him to sleep, which was even more impressive.
Yeah.
So going through it, so we have the Tony Leon fight, the Josh Zuckerman fight, the Mike D'Angelo fight, the Trent McDade fight, and then I was there for your UFC fight against Violent Bob Ross. I love that guy too, but I feel like you did just enough to win. I think it was a super close fight.
Yeah.
And I think nobody can really disagree with that. But you
it was a great close fight, and I got the win. That's what we do.
So in figuring it out, I've actually attended more of your fights than anyone else I know.
That's awesome.
And
man.
I thought, and you're 5-0, just so you know.
There we go. You got to come out to Vegas. We got to get you into that Apex.
That would be great. I would love to visit it. And I'm glad you brought up the Apex because you and Billy Q both came through on the Contender Series. You got to kind of feel what it was like to have not a huge crowd. What was the atmosphere like with Billy a few weeks ago or 2 weeks ago? Having that same, being back in there, was it kind of weird going backwards, or was it so much better for both of you?
No, it was awesome. Just kind of like no nonsense. They pulled us up. We just got the warm up in, and then we walked. And it was a little weird, walking out with just like I was there for Billy Q's Contender Series fight in there, and they had like stands and stuff, and they have like at least a small crowd in there, like
the family and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. But this time it was just empty. They clear out everything, so that was a little weird. But we were walking out there focused. Billy Q got in there, he handled his business, and I was able to be in that corner, and I was freaking out in the corner a little bit. Arroyo had to turn around and tell me to shut up a couple times.
Why were you freaking out?
It was a good fight, but yeah, it was that was awesome, and kind of just like being in the corner, not being able to not being the one fighting, it was different. But then Bisbing was like sitting, it was like I guess 6 feet away from me, like doing his commentary, and I was like listening to him too, kind of like turning around. So that was kind of funny. It was cool, but at the end of the day, you're in that cage, you're fighting. Nothing really else matters.
And I think that's funny that you can hear the commentary because we've seen a lot of that from fights. Not just, it's not so much them hearing the commentary because they really don't want you to know that they can hear them. But the Anthony Smith fight is always going to resound in my head for the rest of my life because Glover Teixeira is on his back punching him. And he goes, I'm sorry, man. And Anthony goes, what? He goes, I'm sorry, man, it's just business. And he's like, yeah, it's cool, no problem. And they're having a conversation.
Yeah, that was a moment.
And with that, was it weird to be able to hear, do you think it was easier for Billy to hear instructions from you guys? Obviously there's no distractions at that point, but do you also feel that it's almost like a bad thing? Because if you can hear, your fighter can hear you, his corner can hear you, the other fighter can hear you. Do you feel like eventually people are going to start to kind of pick up on that and you kind of have to start changing it up?
No, I don't think so. Like I said, at the end of the day, it's a fight. Whatever advantage, disadvantage you think your opponent has the same thing. So, you can hear your corner, but so your opponent can hear his corner, and you can also hear their corner. So it's just, I think it's just another element that the fighters have to deal with. But like I said, man, in the end of the day, it's a fight. So that's it.
So for those of those listeners, I say those listeners, hey all you guys, who don't know who you are, like how did you get started fighting? What was the catalyst that said, you know what, I want to do this for my career, not just have some fun with it? Because I mean, you had about 7 amateur fights. And I feel like, that was leading up to, 2014 when you took your first pro fight. And you've been pro ever since. So I can't believe that you've already been a pro for 6 years. Like, that blows my mind. So talk about,
went fast.
The beginnings of the Steamrolla, including that amazing nickname.
I wrestled in high school like a lot of guys. And then started doing jiu-jitsu because, missed wrestling. Started competing in jiu-jitsu and started training with amateur fighters at Gracie Tampa South, and then eventually started fighting taking my own fights. But the real like turning moment for me was my 4th amateur fight was a Costa Rican title fight, and it was I had my 3rd amateur fight a week before it.
Yes,
I had a teammate. Yeah, I had a teammate who was supposed to fight for that Costa Rican belt, and he actually got hurt. And then they said, do I want to fight? And I was like, hell yeah, I want to fight. Go to you get a free trip to Costa Rica, and
especially as an amateur.
To fight, to fight their 9-0 Costa Rican hometown champion. Yeah, of course. But I still had I had my 3rd fight, and then Arroyo told me to just go in there, don't take any punches, take him down, and submit him. And that's what he told me, and I was like, okay. And then actually I went in there, and I took him down, and I rear naked choked him in like 30 seconds. But it was pretty perfect. And then we went out to Costa Rica, and it was really the first thing I got back from all the hard work I was putting. I got a trip to Costa Rica paid for, and my everything, my food, my hotel, everything paid for out there. And I fought a tough guy. The guy was 9-0, coming off a bunch of knockouts in Costa Rica, and he was a hometown guy.
It's always scary.
And, we fought in a bullfighting arena in Costa Rica too, so it was pretty cool. And then I went out there, and he actually rocked me in like the first round, and then I ended up just taking him down, and it was my first fight with ground and pound, so I was so pumped about that because in amateur they used to not let you ground and pound
until after after 3.
Yeah. So it was my first fight with ground and pound, so I was pumped, and I just took him down and ground and pounded him out, mounted him, and beat the piss out of him until I armbarred him, and I was the Costa Rican champ. And after that, I was like, I really I started believing in myself that I could do something with this, and I could take it to the next level. And then I kept fighting amateur, and once Arroyo said that he thought I was ready to go pro, we went pro, and then now we're here.
And it's crazy because as an amateur, if most people don't know, like, you're not getting paid. You know, you're going out there, you're putting your body on the line for fame and glory. Like, that's what it comes down to. So for you to be able to get a paid trip to Costa Rica to fight in a bull riding arena for a title and your hotel and food paid, like, that had to be, like, that's a once in a lifetime.
Oh, yeah, but then it was twice because I got to go back to defend my belt.
Even better.
I know.
And I've talked to amateur fighters before, and I remember, talking to some of them, and they get to that point where they can do the ground and pound. And I remember being at fights and watching them get on the ground and hold it back for a second, and then go, "Oh, I can do this," and just start, like, you just see them go to town. So
yeah, it's good.
I can't wait for local fights again. I'm not gonna lie, it's I was excited for the UFC in Jacksonville. I thought that was huge for Florida. Just because there's been, I think we talked about this a couple episodes ago, there's been 510 UFC events, and they've never come to Jacksonville, ever. So to have three cards back-to-back was pretty awesome.
Yeah, definitely. When the world needed it, too.
Exactly, and they're not slowing down, and I know tonight's card, hopefully people are watching. If you didn't watch the first 3 fights, they ended in 2 minutes. Knockout, knockout, knockout. And then Merab's just being a machine and breaking his own takedown record as a bantamweight. So if he had 9 more, he would have broke Khabib's record and been number 1. So you need to let him know he needs 22 takedowns in a fight.
He'll get there, and he'll get it.
So I want to talk a lot about Matt Arroyo, because there's been no lack of mentioning him throughout this and how crucial and important he has been. So, talk about when that partnership, like you said, getting introduced to him is one thing, but him being such a pivotal part of, your life, Billy Q's life, Gracie Tampa South, and everything that's gone on with it. So kind of want to talk about how important his role is to you in your fighting life, and not just your fighting life, but your, personal life outside of it.
Yeah, definitely. I found Arroyo because I was training with Matt Serra in Long Island, and I told him I was moving down to Tampa, and Serra said that Matt Arroyo's got a gym down in Tampa to hit him up. So because they were on the Ultimate Fighter team together, or Arroyo was on Serra's team, and
I knew what you meant.
yeah. So and then as soon as I got down there. Arroyo has a beautiful facility, Gracie Tampa South, and he had fighters, and he really groomed me. He taught me what a fight camp was. I didn't know anything. I was a wrestler, and he really taught me the fight game. Taught me, 8 weeks fight camp, about how to cut weight, about how to do everything, and he wouldn't even let me fight until I had my blue belt. He was, a big jiu-jitsu guy, which I think a lot of guys should do. I tell every amateur fighter I know to get their blue belt before they take a fight. And he's been guiding me and being a mentor to me, for like the past 10 years, I guess.
Jeez.
And and he's my manager now, and he'll be with me till the wheels fall off this Steamrolla. So I'm blessed to have him with me, and we're going to the top.
Well, yeah, and that's the crazy thing, is that being able to work together so well, and then of course I can't forget the Steamrolla. We have to talk about where that came from, and I mean the fact that it not only rhymes with your last name, but how it works so well. So who gave you the nickname, and what made you think this is what I need to keep going into fights?
Well, as I was fighting like amateur, my dad and then my uncle Dolzy, they would come to all my amateur fights, and they loved it. My dad still does. My dad's been trying to been having Arroyo hit up the UFC to try to see if they could get him into the Apex for this fight. This is gonna be like the first one that he's missed, I think, ever.
Oh wow.
So yeah, he's almost freaking out a little bit more than than anybody else. But but yeah, him and my uncle, they were just shooting the shit for a while, trying to think of a nickname for me, and my uncle Dolzy, he's also from Boston, so he's got that Boston accent. And he's like, "Oh, the Steamrolla Frevola," and then kind of rolled off the tongue, and I was just running through people on the amateur circuit, and it was, it's my fight style. I come forward and I steamroll people, and then it's stuck, and it's definitely a good one, and yeah, that's where that came from.
I can just hear the Boston even more after you said it, just like resonating.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it works so much better. So I'm glad you brought dad and uncle into the mix, just because, there's some fighters who their family is like, oh, I'm not really into what you do, just go do you. And there's some families that, support 100%, like you said, dad being in every fight. Is that really important to have their support, going forward with the career that you chose? Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, if it wasn't for, how hard it is, being a low level pro, if it wasn't for their support, I don't know if I would still be here, being able to make it through those, that low level, and just being able to, one of the best things about fighting is that I can bring people together, bring my family together. Like I said, those Costa Rican fights, those 2 Costa Rican fights I had, those turned into family reunions. Like, I had uncles come out, I had cousins come out, I had my brother come out. It was like 9 of us out there both times. So they'd come, they'd watch me beat some dude up, and then we turned it into a vacation, a little family reunion. It was great, and every fight, my family, my friends, they come out to every fight, and as you can hear them throughout the arena with the steamroller chants now. Yeah, I'm blessed to have the support system and the family and friends that I have. They love to watch me fight. They know what I'm about. They know that I always bring the fight and that I'm always prepared. And they're with me at the highest highs, and they're with me at the lowest lows. So it's pretty awesome.
And I've been privy to the steamroller chants. That last fight against Violent Bob Ross, you definitely heard it, and there was a big section of the crowd that was just blanketed.
Yeah, it was amazing.
A lot of fighters don't like to talk about losses, but I want to really touch on it just because you said highest of highs, lowest of lows. So, you go through the Contender Series, you have a great fight, you get the contract, and then you have that fight against, Reyes. What did you learn from that fight? Because, again, that was the big stage. You had been, World Series of Fighting, because I'm allowed to say other promotions instead of just other promotions. That was a bigger stage. The RFC was more of a Florida-based stage. Still produced a lot of great fighters out of it. But that was your first time on the big, the biggest stage of them all, as they call it. So, I kind of want to hear your thoughts on how that resonated with you and how it's changed your, if it's changed your fight style, if it's changed your mentality, or, what it did to you. Because I feel that a loss creates a better fighter. I know that sounds strange, but it's true.
100%, and that's exactly what it did to me. For the longest time, you've seen me since the amateurs. I never lost. I was an undefeated amateur. I was undefeated throughout the pros. I got up to 16 wins, consecutive wins, up until my UFC debut, between like Muay Thai fights and amateur fights, and then even throughout that, people would always ask, what's going to happen when you lost, and I always say, you see what you're made of coming back from setbacks, and even I've taken losses in the wrestling room, in jiu-jitsu tournaments and whatnot, but I never lost a fight on the big stage. But up until then. And I was, I went out there, and I kind of did what I always do, which was go in there and kind of just steamroll, go to steamroll 'em. And I came out there guns blazing.
Yeah, I remember. I was like, oh my God.
I threw caution to the wind. And I was going to make a statement. It was kind of a kill or be killed kind of fight, and I was on the losing end of that. And it was against a juiced up Mexican, and I hit him in the chin, and he didn't go down. And he hit me on the chin, and I went down, and he got the win. But I learned so much from that fight, and after that loss, I took a little time off. I picked myself up. I dusted myself off, and I got back to the basics, man. I questioned a lot of things, and I just got back to my training, and I trusted. I know that I'm a great fighter, and that never was a question. But I really had to become more cerebral with my approach, and have more of a game plan, and just be a smarter fighter, and like I said, show the experience that I have. Now I've got a lot of fights under my belt now, and I think every fight that I have now, you could see the growth from fight to fight, and that's something, that's what life is all about, really, is and becoming a better person, a better fighter, a better whatever you want to be. So like I said, that was, it could have been a huge, who knows where I would have been if I didn't lose that fight. I learned so much from it, and I like to say we're on a 3-fight winning streak from there, because I won that Lando fight.
And I was going to talk about that, because you had the fight with Lando, and anybody who remembers the Lando-Tony Ferguson fight, like, it was crazy, and then they're like, nothing could ever come close to that with Lando. Like, he can't do that again. And then you guys have that great fight. Ends up being a draw. So you come into your first 2 fights, and you're like, I want to win. Like, give me a win. And since then, your earlier fights, there was a lot of knockouts, there was a lot of submissions, and I think you're right. I think that loss kind of changed almost the reckless abandonment apart, because you were just running through people, and you hadn't, it's kind of like jumping over fences and then you hit a brick wall. It's a harsh way to say it, but it's kind of what happened. And I've seen a more articulate fighter. I've seen a fighter who grew up really fast after those first 2 fights, because I think you had to at that point.
Yeah, and I got into the UFC with 6-0 as a pro. It's not a lot of pro fights, but kind of like I was learning in the octagon. But now I'm feeling I'm excited to go out there as my fifth UFC fight and show how comfortable I am in there. And now I've been through a bunch of fight weeks. I know the process, and it's all going to come together in this fight, and we're getting back to our finishing ways for sure. And this is gonna show it, this next fight.
And you guys heard it here. He said it was going to be a finish. You heard that.
Yeah.
I like how I'm looking over here like somebody's going to see me. But really, there's so many times, where fighters just, they get into a rut, or they, like you said, they keep climbing, and then some don't recover from that. And I like that what you've done is you took that as probably the best thing that could have happened. Nobody wants a loss, don't get me wrong. But you took that and made the best of it. So coming into your fight next week, originally scheduled to fight Roberts, now you've got Camacho. What is the biggest thing that you see that, I don't want to have you give away your game plan here, but what's the biggest thing you see as far as like a weakness that can be exploited, or something that, you've seen about him that, you kind of need to watch out for?
He's a warrior just like me. and that's honestly what really excites me. Is that he's tough as nails. You know, he's an island warrior, and that just makes for amazing stylistic matchup for both of us. But I want to go in there and show that I'm a complete fighter. I'm a more technical, smarter fighter. But if it comes down to be a dog fight, those dog fights I win. So
this is true.
Yeah. So I think it's a perfect matchup for me and a perfect matchup for the fans, and there's not going to be any losers in this fight. Really, I think that everyone's gonna walk away, like all the fans and except maybe not Frank, but he'll be all right.
Well, maybe this will be one of those situations where you get the win, you both get 50 G's,
Yeah, maybe.
So talk about, you mentioned the fiance and getting married next year. So what's that been like, having that kind of in the back of your mind that you're getting married next year? Like, that's huge. So
Yeah, it's crazy. And I just turned 30 like 2 days ago.
Yeah, happy belated birthday. It was Thursday, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't really feel like much different, but and then I kind of look at like the past and I guess when I had my first fight when I was 21 years old, when I was back then, and when I thought about where I would be at 30, I would say I'd be in the UFC, yeah, entering my prime in the UFC, getting ready to make my title run. So I think we're right where we need to be, and I'm blessed to have my fiance back home, Billy, and she's a ride or die. She gets it. She's been with me since my amateur days, and
wow.
She understands that the whole fight camp and the weight cut, and she gets it, and I can't wait to handle business June 20th in Vegas, and then get home to her and get home to my family, and summer. Nothing beats a summer in Long Island, so I'm looking forward to that too. She's going to be picking me up from the airport with a pizza, a nice grandma's pie. Her family
very nice.
Her family actually owns an Italian restaurant, pizzeria, Sinelli's Pizzeria, in Franklin Square. So they're gonna have a nice grandma's pie for me waiting in the car when they pick me up from the airport. And no matter what happens, I know that she's gonna be at that airport with that pizza, and that kind of puts my mind at ease a little bit. Yeah, I can't wait.
I think it's funny that the entire time we've been talking, you've been smiling about things, but that made you the happiest.
Oh, you have no idea. Like when throughout this weight cut, throughout this, whenever things get hard or whatever, I always think like, oh yeah, that pizza's gonna be waiting for me soon.
And that's fantastic because
the little things.
And I'm going to say fortunate enough, because I've seen the videos, I've seen everything. Fortunate enough not to ever have to cut weight.
Yeah, it sucks.
And I was going to say the consensus is that it sucks. And I know that with the Billy Q, you had some really funny videos of him in that little
yeah. Yeah, but it does make you appreciate everything a lot more. So like I always say, life's about balance. So it's good to really sacrifice and crack down and grind and diet or whatever you're doing, and then let loose a little and enjoy yourself a little. So, like I said, balance it out.
Yeah, exactly. And I kind of wanted to go back to something you touched on earlier when it comes to balance is, you said not taking a fight before you were a blue belt. And, we both know Ben Zapata, who was a guest on the show last time, and he was a brown belt by the time he took his first fight. So while he didn't have the MMA experience, he had that jiu-jitsu. So I agree with you there. I think there should be in that sense, because with MMA being the only sport really where you don't have to be an amateur. You can go straight into pro fighting.
Yeah, it's true.
And
And back in the day in Florida, that's how it used to be. I remember when I first moved down to Florida, that there wasn't any amateur fighting.
God, those were the days. I remember Daniel Strauss told me he never took an amateur fight, and his first 7 fights came within like 3 months. First 7 pro fights, and he won 4.
The old days.
Yeah, he won 4, lost 3, and then won like his next 16 fights in a row. And I can't even imagine not having the amateur experience and kind of getting used to that and just going right into it.
Yeah, that's how it was back in the day, it seems, and they're really, really, like, literally learning on the job.
I can't even imagine. So, as far as jiu-jitsu, what belt are we up to at this point?
Oh man,
I'm calling you out.
I don't put the gi on too much. I've kind of been a purple belt for maybe like 4 years now.
I mean,
a long
that's
time.
okay.
Actually, maybe 5 years. It's been a long time. I've been a purple belt for a really long time. But yeah, kind of focusing on the fighting right now. But yeah, I gotta put the gi back on. I always say it. But.
It's all right. I trained this morning. We're good.
Yeah. There you go.
But and that's what I love is that, you know, whether it's fighting, jiu-jitsu, obviously in jiu-jitsu you're not getting punched in the face intentionally. It still happens. We all know that.
It does.
And how important it is to your game, because while it might not be the main focus of it, you've been able to win those fights by submission. You've been able to use your jiu-jitsu with your wrestling to kind of control your opponents and kind of put the fight where you want it to. Whereas if you were just a white belt or just a blue belt at that point, you really don't have that kind of control.
So important. I mean, just like, you know, the Gracies used to say back in the day, like, what is it, like 80, 90% of fights end up on the ground. Like, even on the streets, like, in the end of the day, a fight's going to end up on the ground. And if you know what you're doing on the ground, you're going to be okay. I think jiu-jitsu is such an important martial art to learn, just for anybody. And like we're seeing now, you know, like law enforcement need to be learning it. And just it's jiu-jitsu changes lives, you know, it's great.
And I think if more people understood jiu-jitsu and its practical applications, not just for, you know, not everybody who trains competes, which is a strange thing to work so hard towards something and not, you know, you don't have to put yourself to the test. You don't have to get in there and say, I need to prove myself. You know, those years of training kind of do that for you. And
yeah, exactly. And you're gonna get pushed enough in the room, in the practice room, and if that's what you're looking for, you know, you're gonna get it. And if, you know, a lot of people say they don't want to compete, but, you know, if you ever, you know, they have competitions for all different levels, you know, so it's definitely, it's great, and it's anything, getting out of your comfort zone, it's going to help you grow.
Mm-hmm.
So it's awesome.
And since it's being recorded, so I'm going to try and compete this year for the first time.
There you go. Do it.
So I was hoping to have a blue belt by June. Obviously, gym shutting down kind of ruined that. It was really weird to go back to training a couple weeks ago because I felt like I forgot everything I had learned.
Yeah, but I mean, sometimes little breaks like that kind of are good for you. You know, it rests your body, it rests your mind, and then when you come back, you don't overthink things so much. Sometimes you go back and trust your body, trust your good habits that hopefully you formed. So
getting back into those.
Yeah, there you go. That's it. Stay at it.
But I think at the same time, it's, you know, I had somebody ask me once, they said, once I get to black belt, what's the point? And I don't think they train anymore, and I think that's probably a good thing. But I think for me, like, a white belt can still teach a black belt something that they forgot.
Oh, yeah, you'll learn from anybody on the mats, just through, you know, different different minds, different techniques, different body types, different anything, and that's the whole thing about training is learning and growing, and and having that mindset that you can learn from anybody,
Mm-hmm.
and humbling yourself really.
And I don't want to forget this because I know we talked a lot about Arroyo, we talked a lot about Billy Q, but talk a little bit more about training with Matt Serra and Ray Longo. And I mean, those guys have wealths of knowledge. I'm sure if they wrote books, they would just be endless. So, how exciting is it for you that you've had that connection with them for so long and got to see the people that have come in there and helped shape your career?
It's unreal. You know, Ray Longo is the man. It's like he's the coolest guy. He's the most down to earth, realist guy I've ever met. He'll tell you how it is, flat out, no hesitations. And you know, when he sees you as one of yours, he'll die for you. You know, he's a real one, and me and all us for him. And that's kind of the camaraderie that we have. And then Serra has got, his energy is there's nothing like it. When he walks into that room, you know it before you even see him. As soon as he opens the door, you could just sense his energy, and it lifts the entire room. It's unreal, and just the amount of talent that's there. On the mats at Serra BJJ, in the gym at Longo and Weidman, you know, with you know, Aljamain, Ali Quinta, Chris Weidman, Marab, and then a whole bunch of up and coming pro fighters, up and coming amateur fighters, and everybody helps each other. Everybody works hard, and yeah, it's amazing over there.
I can't imagine, like, trying not to laugh when you're talking to Matt Serra, because he just seems like he'd be that kind of person who's either going to yell at you or he's going to tell you a joke and get you to, like, start laughing during a training session.
Oh, he's hilarious. It's awesome.
So, with that being said, you did mention, you know, some up-and-coming fighters. Is there any names that people should be on the lookout for that have been in the gym that you think, you know, this is the next guy that you'll see in the UFC?
Definitely. In Long Island, we got Naz Sadikov. He just fought for CFFC.
Mm-hmm.
He's another 55er. I've been sparring with him a lot. And then you got Bazooka. Bazooka's the Ring of Combat 145-pound champ. You got Dylan Montello, the Quiet Man. You got Charlie Campbell, both two other pros. You got the kid, Justin Montavo. A lot of good pros coming up from Serra Longo. And then even at Gracie Tampa South, we got like John Arke. He's one of the up and coming pros. And then like some guys you probably still know, you know, Danny Matos is still at it, and he's a very talented fighter too. You know,
incredibly talented.
I want to say, yeah, very very talented. He went on a little losing skid, but he got a win in his last fight, last couple fights. So he's still training, still at it. Even another old school guy you might know, Troy Gerhardt, is still at it, still doing his thing in Tampa. You know, and then we got Hugh Poley, the Wolverine. Hugh's a beast, and yeah, there's talent, all a lot of talent down here in Tampa, a lot of talent in Long Island, and I'm just lucky I get to train with all these guys.
Well, yeah, and that's exciting because, you know, I don't want you to overlook your own path, but you see things being this far into your game. You know, you're considered a veteran at this point of the sport. I think it's safe to say I don't think there's even an actual number of fights or years of fighting, but I feel like just your experience alone brings you into that category of veteran. So you do have to look out for those up-and-coming guys. Because as we're seeing, you know, with the Fight Islands coming up, where the UFC's putting on 4 cards in 2 weeks. And one of those fights is Gilbert Burns versus Kamaru Usman, who both train together and are managed by the same person. So I thought that's insane. again, that this is a sport where, you could be training with somebody you could eventually end up fighting.
Yeah, that's crazy. See Gilbert and Usman be fighting, and I saw like Henry Hoof like made a post that said he was like gonna like step aside. Said that his job is done. He trained these guys from day one, got them to world title fights. I think that's really cool. It's got to be a cool feeling for a coach. I think that's the only way I would fight a teammate. It'd have to be for a world title, honestly.
Well, and again, you stick to the roots. You're not going to take a short notice fight if you're not ready. And like you said, if it's for a title at the end of the day, the title's coming back to the gym. It just might come around the waist of somebody else.
Yeah, exactly. Me and Billy Q always used to mess around that we'd fight each other, like if we were in the Ultimate Fighter house or something. And that we probably would have fought each other in the Ultimate Fighter house if that ever happened. But yeah,
I think Billy said he would beat you in a fight. Don't quote me here.
It'd be a first round finish, steamroll.
Oh, well, Billy was gonna join us, but I
He's still on his victory tour.
Yeah, that's fine. And it was exciting to watch that too, because again, I've watched you guys for so long, and I've seen you grow as people, as fighters, and the next title that's going to be added to your name is husband. So, big life changes. Like you said, just turning 30.
Yeah, him too. Billy Q's engaged to a awesome woman, Bree. So I'm glad he just got that big win. He got screwed out of a bonus, but I told him welcome to the club. So,
so I also realized today that we've done. This is episode 11 of the show, and you are the first active fighter we are talking to. So I haven't been able to ask this question, but I want you to talk about the people that are most important and your sponsors, just because at the end of the day, you got to get paid.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, we talked about most of them. My team, my gyms, Gracie Tampa South, Longo and Weidman, Serra BJJ, my strength and conditioning back home, acceleration sports training, my strength and conditioning here in Tampa, driven training down in South Tampa, and then my sponsors. I know no judges needed. They've been with me since the beginning. My first amateur fight, really.
Mm-hmm.
Troy from No Judges Needed is a
Troy
black belt
Logano,
himself. Yeah. He's always supporting local MMA, and he's just the man in every sense of the word. So No Judges Needed started with me, and again will be with me, until the end. And then U.S. Cryo Tampa, I got to give a big shout out to. U.S. Cryo Tampa, Mark over there, they really take care of me. There's something about the cold therapy, I'm telling you, especially when I'm in like fight camp. I do cryo every day. I've been doing the cryo every day, and it just it gets my body just like ready to fight. I mean, my body is hardened right now from the cryo. It gets my mentality, my body. Every time you walk out of there, I feel like Superman. And then they have the red light therapy. They have the local treatment. They have the Normatec legs. They have like an IV bar in there. There's people always going in there getting IVs, probably from a night of drinking the night before. They got a lot of great recovery at U.S. Cryo Tampa, right over on Kennedy. If you're an athlete, if you're anything, you really need to go there. And then I've got a meal prep sponsor up in Long Island, X Factor Meals, or they just changed the name to Redefine Meals. So if you're in Long Island, they will deliver you meals. And then I got to give a shout out to my homegirl Maria down in Tampa, who's been making me meal preps and juices while I'm here. I'm so blessed to be surrounded with good people that support me and help me achieve these goals. I think that's everyone.
I think so too, and I'll definitely have to. I've been wanting to try the cryo for a while. I don't have a necessary need for it. I'm
No,
not doing
do
what
it,
you
man.
guys.
It'll change your mindset.
Uh,
It'll be great. You'll love it.
so that's what I heard, and again, now that it's on the show and it's recorded, I kind of have to do it. I can't really back out of it.
Do it. That cold therapy is a game changer.
Absolutely. So, with that being said, thank you so much for coming on the show. Shout out to Epic Jits Tees. Those of you watching, it's streaming across the bottom. They are making the Quiggin Out MMA t-shirts, if I know which way to go with my camera. You can go to their site. They've got a lot of cool stuff. They had some Tiger King stuff, and I only mention it now because the most normal thing of 2020 has been Tiger King. And that's just kind of weird. So, thanks to Combat Press for putting things together. And then, Matt, thanks to you. Like I said, finding out tonight that I've been to more of your fights than anyone else's is kind of crazy because it's been a long journey. And I just hope to, keep seeing you, rise up those ranks, never having to fight Billy Q, just because I know he'll listen to this.
Of course, man, and yeah, whenever you want to talk, to hit me up. That article you wrote about me for my pro debut is still like my favorite article I've ever gotten written.
I appreciate that, man. I really do.
Yeah,
This is
I know you remember that one too. It was a great one.
I can't forget it, and it's
Yeah.
great because the years you've spent in this sport have been the years I've spent in this sport. You've been doing the fighting aspect, I've been doing the writing aspect, and every now and then just getting to talk to somebody I've talked to before, it's harder because I'm not asking you the same questions that everybody would be asking who hasn't been talking to you. And with me doing the show, it's my show, so I want us to talk about whatever we want, and I feel like it was a great time. And I try not to ask how you're gonna win or what do you think, but you said you're gonna get a finish. I'm gonna hold you to that, and I'm so excited to see you next weekend. So, on behalf of Quiggin Out MMA, Matt Quiggins, the Steamroller himself, Matt Frevola, thank you, brother.
All right, thanks, bro. Be good, Quiggins, and hit me up after the fight. We'll talk again.
Will do.